All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks for joining our webinar, Optimization During the Holiday Season. I'm Sasha Butkovich. I'm the Communications Marketing Manager at Corra. And as I'm sure you know, Corra is a digital commerce agency creating unified commerce experiences for fashion, lifestyle, and beauty brands. One really important concern for these brands and merchants of all kinds is optimization. So to cover some of these key topics, we created our 4-part optimization webinar series. And today's webinar is part 1, presented by Van Schlichting, Corra's SEO and optimization practice lead. Van's background is on the client side of e-commerce, where he spent 15 years working in a wide range of industries from electronics to sporting goods to fashion. And he's been responsible for launching extensive testing programs on platforms such as Adobe Target and Monetate. So with that, I am going to pass it over to Van.
Thank you, Sasha. So I have been tinkering with things for many years. I started tinkering with computers, and nowadays I tinker with websites. Today I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I look at, some of the kind of high-level challenges that you see during the holidays, and kind of how I navigate those things. So the first thing is we all can tell that our metrics go a little bit crazy during the holidays. Right around that red line there, everything stops making sense. Everything from engagement metrics to looking at how people are purchasing and where their journey is headed on the site. Everything goes nuts, and inside this chaos is the opportunity to reach new customers, and there's also challenges around identifying who it is that's hitting our site with all this additional traffic. So my goal is to give you some tips to begin to identify and act on the opportunities present in the holiday season. So there are really 3 areas that I think are most important to optimization during the holidays. The first is an increase in the number of traffic sources to your site. So instead of just your typical channels, typical referral sites and other places that your traffic's coming from, there's a lot of additional traffic, and it doesn't have a very good definition around it. Makes it difficult to be relevant to that traffic, especially the kind of unattributable stuff where you don't know where it came from necessarily, like direct load traffic. Second area is a change in the composition of the traffic. So new visitors and gift buyers behave differently and have a different set of expectations of your site and the experience. Additionally, your existing visitors are engaging in very different ways. They're following very different shopping patterns as they come to your site during the holidays because they're doing different kinds of shopping, or they're engaging with different types of marketing programs than they normally do. And the last area is a much more mechanical one, the dreaded code freeze. And so that's the area that I'm really going to talk about first today. In regard to code freeze, an agile optimization program needs to be able to respond quickly to new opportunities as they present themselves, and there is none more frequent new opportunities than during the holiday season. And examples of where a code freeze may become a challenge is in building things like custom landing pages, additional personalized end caps on the site, lifestyle and category shopping pages where you're putting content alongside that shopping experience, and promotional messaging like banners and call to actions across the site. So how do we deal with this? Well, number one, the development team and the business often have different definitions of what code is. And indeed, each development department will have slightly different parameters around what they're willing to adjust during a high-risk time of year like the holidays, and what they're not willing to adjust. Usually, some degree of content can be changed. Banners, text on page, obviously item updates and things like that. And so you really need to know what items can be safely adjusted, and you need to engage with your development team to understand exactly what they're going to allow. Now, Monetate and Adobe as well as other testing platforms, have what they call actions and monetator offers in Adobe Target. And those are canned, ready-to-use, previously QA'd actions that you're able to drop into campaigns. So these offers are essentially something that you can set up ahead of time and get agreement that you're going to drop that custom content into that action, which edits only a very specific spot on the site during the holiday season. So that's one area where you can kind of get some synergies around creating the actions and talking to your dev team about what's entailed in a code freeze. And then the last thing is, can we agree to limit the risk to non-shopping pages? So, obviously, index page, category page, product page, cart, and checkout are all very vital to the shopping experience. Do we need to have as much of a code freeze on other collateral pages that may not be quite as complex and may not have as much of a risk of creating an issue if you're making changes in those areas? So these are all things that you can kind of talk to your development team about and see if you can really get some movement on the code freeze. The next big difference in holiday traffic is changes in composition. So during the holidays, the makeup your visitors can change considerably. An example is, Mr. Smith is your customer, but Mrs. Smith is coming to purchase a gift for him. And she may have come in previous years to visit. Obviously, she's not your typical customer. Indeed, she's not your customer at all. She's just coming to purchase something. So her behavior is going to be very different from what you would typically expect. Another thing is holiday promotions. So deal seekers that are hitting your site. Those are individuals that sometimes are taking advantage of a pricing discount versus your competitors, or maybe they just saw something for an easy price and they decided to click in on it. And they too are not actually your typical customer. They're just a purchaser coming to buy a single item. And then the last thing is kind of seasonal visitors. This is true of fashion. So the fashion industry has a lot of seasonal, seasonal lines like the winter collection, and some of those visitors during the holidays may not even be interested in gift buying. They're just there for a certain time of the year, and that's when they engage with your brand. So it's important to consider these types of traffic when we talk about how we're going to segment them more effectively, how we're going to isolate them and be able to report on them. So often distinguishing between the different visitors is difficult since they might not come from an attributable source. So what you want to do is look at visitors who are spending more or less time than your usual traffic on the site. Same for the return frequency. So within all of this new traffic, you should see some trends around, well, these people from this particular source are spending a lot more time on site than is standard. You can also look at what promotion codes visitors are using. So I've actually done some testing around capturing promotional codes at the beginning of the shopping experience rather than in the checkout funnel. And that actually allows you to identify where they came from based on the code that they entered, and you can serve up more relevant content around that particular code. Another point is to look at how often people have returned and how often they haven't converted. So gift buyers will often only come into the site, add the cart, and then go double check, make sure that this is what Mr. Smith wanted. And so that's another factor to look at, is how often they're converting or if they're adding to cart and then abandon later. You may want to make adjustments to your abandoned campaigns to reach those customers. The next point is new traffic sources. So obviously during the holidays you get a lot of additional traffic into the site. Some of it's growing in your existing channels and some of it is actually entirely new sources. Some examples of these would be deal websites, some of your brand marketing initiatives, getting people to engage with your brand, direct loading with a promotion code, as I mentioned, purchasing new email lists. Your marketing team may buy new lists with entirely new customers to acquire. And then, of course, there is the unknowable and attributable direct load traffic that you have to work with. So parsing out these new traffic sources, it can be very difficult. So my first recommendation, if this is your first holiday season on this particular site, is to segment and separate these visitors in your reporting. So instead of attempting to figure out who they are, just separate them completely, report on the growth channels that you already have, and separate these out and watch them very carefully for behavior that's similar to known customer groups. So since you're holding them out separately, you can see that much more clearly. So looking at those behavioral cues to determine the segment: are these gift buyers? Are these deal seekers? Are these window shoppers? Looking at those engagement metrics and separating that out and going, okay, this is who this particular person is. And then once you've kind of identified what their behavior is telling you, you can decide whether you want to target them with a specific, segment-specific strategy, or whether you want to drop them into a bucket that already exists that you have other traffic in. So to recap, kind of the three areas that I've covered today is identifying your customers, segmenting them properly, and then being able to execute with personalization and testing campaigns. If you focus on being able to do these three things during your testing program, you're going to end up with a lot more success during the holidays, and you're going to be able to do a lot more dynamic testing and targeting of individual customers and customer groups. So if you have any questions about what we've covered today, please give us an email at hello@corra.com, and thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Van, for all the great information, short and sweet, but packed with good stuff. I just want to remind everyone that the next webinar in our series is going to be on September 1st. So we hope you'll join us then. Thanks very much.